Hey, 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 this is Taz Street with Positive Out Loud. Today we have a very special guest. We have here is Gwen Orwiler. She is an emotional freedom coach and an inner child advocate. And she has a lot of things that has happened in her past to get her to this point to be able to help other people who are having issues with feeling like they're maybe having issues with inside of themselves that they need to get to in order to feel more happier, more calm, more peaceful. But the first thing I want to ask you, Gwen, what led you to this point? Tell me a little bit about your past and what happened there.
Oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Isn't that funny? Somebody else starts talking to me and I get nervous. Um, let's see. What happened in my childhood? What didn't happen in my childhood, I guess. Um, oh my goodness. Lots of things. Probably the first thing that I've struggled with is that I was born. My parents had 3 kids, and 14 years later, oops, and I always felt like I wasn't wanted. And so I just, that was the filter that I saw the world through, is that I wasn't wanted. And they were so much older. My brothers moved out when I was 4 to go to the Navy. I actually a little bit younger than that. And then my sister moved out to get married when I was 4. And so that felt like she abandoned me because she was kind of my sister mom, so to speak. And gosh, and then it just went from there. Just because I wore that filter, that's what just kept showing up in my life, is all these things, that I wasn't wanted. There was a particular, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but this is probably the thing that made the biggest impact on me, that led me to what I'm doing right now. Is I was about 5, and my sister had already moved out to get married, and I was playing in the living room, minding my own business, doing my thing. And my mom was really angry. She was angry a lot. And so she had a wooden paddle. And on the wooden paddle that she bought for a joke, um, it had a picture of a deer and a bear. And the caption read, "The cute little deer with the bear behind." And she would get really angry and come at me with the paddle. Well, this one particular day, and I didn't realize it was one particular day until after doing a lot of work. I thought it just happened all the time. But she came after me, and I remember being 5 years old and seeing the veins in her neck bulging out. And she came after me and started hitting me with a paddle. And I remember putting my hands on my butt and crying and asking her, what did I do wrong? And she growled at me and said, "If you don't know, you'd better figure it out, because I'm not going to tell you." And my little, now that I understand how the fight or flight mechanism in our brain works and all of that, my little heart was going, and I thought that it was life or death that I figure it out. So I spent 55 years desperately trying to figure it out. And based on what she said, or the childhood program, as I call it, I couldn't ask for help. And so it was, I read all the self-help books I could get my hands on. I counted up one time, I went on and off to talk therapy for 14 years. I took every class I could think of to try to feel better, but I didn't even understand what was going on. And so anyway, long story short, I believe I've grown up to be the person that I most needed when I was a kid. So now, as an inner child advocate, I'm able to help other people get through some of those traumatic experiences. And traumas can be big T traumas or little t traumas, but they're traumas nonetheless, and they can make us follow those old patterns as if in my case, as if I were still 5.
Hmm.
And so, anyway, I don't know if that was more than you wanted to hear, but
And you said that you went to talk therapy for 14 years, and I know a lot of people who've been in therapy, and it helps to some level, but our body holds on to those traumas, correct? And there has to be a way for you to release it and let it go on a deeper level besides talking about it, I would imagine, right?
that's exactly it. And what my experience has been as well is the more we talk about it, it's like re-triggering the trauma. And
Oh, right.
so, with what I do with tapping or emotional freedom technique, EFT, and what we're able to do is it turns down or off the amygdala, the fight or flight mechanism in our brain, and it's a calming mechanism. So it's a way of calming our bodies and releasing and letting go of that trauma that's stuck, you know, in our bodies. It's
So
like
what are some of the other things that you tried before this, before the EFT, besides the talk therapy?
like I said, I read every self-help book. I went to every workshop that I could, be involved with. And basically, I just cried a lot. I
That
was,
is a good release. You got that right.
well, I just cried all the time. And
Mm.
then, I was the director of a nonprofit, and that's basically how I managed my staff. Is I would just burst into tears, and they would say, "Oh, okay, she's crazy. Let's just leave her alone and go do our work." And because it was really impacting my life, that I was just like an open wound all the time.
Hmm.
And when I started doing, I also did when I went through therapy. My last therapist was an EMDR practitioner, and I'm trying to remember what EMDR stands for.
Is it eye movement?
Eye movement desensitization. Uh,
Hmm.
sorry for those people who do EMDR. I
Right.
don't remember, but and I thought that was better than sliced bread. It was really helping
Hmm.
until I learned EFT, and then it was even better from my perspective.
So tell us a little bit more about EFT. How does that work? What are so that people can understand better exactly what that's all about?
Okay, so EFT, or emotional freedom technique, or more commonly called tapping, is basically a combination of ancient Chinese medicine, acupressure, and modern psychology. And so, like you were saying, that the traumas that we experience, especially in childhood, um, we tend to hold in our bodies. And from being socialized to stuff those things down, I call them emotional beach balls. We're trying to hold them down under the water. What happens to a beach ball when you're trying to hold it under the water? It's trying to come back up. And so it's basically like emotional acupuncture without needles. So we have 9 acupressure points in our body, and we tap on them with our own fingertips, while we're focusing in on where we're feeling. When you get your buttons pushed, or
Hmm.
maybe it's just me. I'm the only one that gets my buttons pushed.
You're the only one, Gwen.
When we get our buttons pushed, that's what's happening. Is we're triggering one of those places in our body that stored the trauma. And so what it's able to do is to take the sting out of it. Basically, we focus on tune in to one of those traumas, but we don't have to dig through it and walk through it, slosh through it, and go through all the details of it. We can just focus on it and feel where we're feeling in our body. Typically, where we feel it is we feel pressure, tension, tightness in our head, tears, my ultimate favorite, lump in our throat, pressure, tension, tightness in our chest, stick to our stomach, or pressure and tension on our neck and shoulders. Some version of that. That's
Hmm.
not the entirety of the list, but that's where the typical places are. And so as we're focusing on, let's say, um, I bring something to mind from it could be from today. It could be from today that one of the things I've just recently been able to release, because I've been doing this for 10 years, but I still am a work in progress. I still have things that come up. And one of the things has to do with technology in my business. And the story that kept running through my subconscious mind is that I was going to make a mistake and get in trouble. And it brings back that paddle story to me, or it did.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that really links together. Right, right.
Yeah. And so I would do something with technology for my business, and I would like freak out, and I would be my whole body would go into fight or flight. And so I've been working on it for a while, and I just recently.
Before you move on, Gwen, when some people don't even know because they're so used to feeling that feeling of fight and flight, how does that feel in your body?
Well, it's that anxiety, stressful. It feels different for everyone, but it's that your heart is pounding. Your hands are sweating, you're feeling, because what happens is the blood leaves the thinking part of our brain, the rational part of our brain, and goes into our arms and legs for fighting back or running away.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't think properly when it's like trying to do algebra when your hair's on fire. It's like you can't think straight.
Okay.
And the tapping reduces cortisol and adrenaline that's running through your body at the same time. It's calming your body down and allowing the blood to go back where it belongs so we can think properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's calming mechanism is the bottom line. And so what pops into my head right now is I have a 3-year-old grandson that lives with me. And he, I would go to daycare to pick him up. And I was having conversations with some of the daycare women. And we were talking about one of the issues that almost all of the kids have in daycare already is the inability to soothe themselves.
Exactly. This is so great. I'm glad you're talking about this because my little one, she's 4 years old. And just to get her to calm down enough to go to sleep has been a challenge. And so I looked online and I saw the heart math. I don't know if you heard of that, where you pay attention to more of your heart and how to shift your emotions. So tell me a little bit about how you can help children.
Well, it's kind of cool, actually. That when they first started doing tapping in the mid-90s, they had what was called a tappy bear, which was a little stuffed animal with the point of the tapping point sewn on around their eye and down under their arm and on top of their head. And so a child doesn't have to do it for themselves, and it doesn't have to get complicated. They can tap on their stuffed animal, their tappy bear, or what. They don't make tappy bears anymore, unfortunately, but you can use it with any stuffed animal, and you can teach them the basic point. And they're saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. Are you sad, little bear? Here, and let's tap for you to help you to feel better." Well, they're getting the borrowing benefits from that.
How are they getting the benefits from tapping the bear? Please explain that.
Well, this is one of the things that they found, that in traditional talk therapy, if a therapist is hearing people's emotional wounds and things all day long, they're absorbing that into their own system. And so there's a pretty high burnout rate because they're just absorbing all of this traumatic energy and experience. But with tapping, as I'm working with you, let's say, and I'm tapping along with you, then they realize that I'm getting the relief also, because my subconscious mind and your subconscious mind are holding the same type of emotions. They may be we all have different stories, but we have similar emotions about it. And so I'm getting the borrowing benefit by tapping along with you. And that's what I love about doing groups, is if we work together in a group and I'm working with one person one-on-one and everyone else is tapping along, they all get borrowing benefit from tapping along with the person, even though the issues might be different. They might be completely different. Our subconscious mind takes us to where it needs to go.
That's incredible. Wow.
Same with the children, is if they're tapping on the bear or the stuffed animal or whatever their favorite little friend is and calming their friend down, they get the borrowing calming benefit in their subconscious mind.
Can you give us an example, just like one quick type of tapping technique that could help them calm down?
Well, what comes to my mind is my niece, who was about 10, I think, when she saw her dog get hit and killed.
Oh.
And I happened to walk in at just like a few minutes after that happened. And she kind of was, you could tell she was just really distraught. And she sat on my lap. And I said, want to play the tappy game? And she said, okay. And so basically, this is what I did for her, is I had her follow along with me and repeat after me like an echo. And I would start here on the side of your hand.
I'm going to do it.
And okay, perfect. And so let's pretend that you're my niece and that you just saw that, your dog got hit and killed.
Okay.
And so I said something to the effect of, even though, and then you would repeat after me like an echo.
Even though.
I just saw my dog get hit.
I just saw my dog get hit.
And it makes me feel so sad.
And it makes me feel so sad.
I deeply and completely accept how I feel.
Accept how I feel.
Even though I just saw him get hit.
I just saw him get hit.
And it makes me so sad.
And it makes me so sad.
I deeply and completely accept how I feel.
Accept how I feel.
Even though I feel so sad.
I feel so sad.
He died.
He died.
And I'm so sad about it.
And I'm so sad about it.
I deeply and completely accept how I feel.
Accept how I feel.
And then we go up on our eyebrow here. I'm so sad.
I'm so sad.
And off to the side here on the side of your eye. This makes me so sad.
Makes me so sad.
I saw what happened.
I saw what happened.
And it makes me so sad.
And it makes me so sad.
I feel so sad about it.
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 Under your arm is the weirdest one, right where your bra strap would go front to back.
Okay.
It makes me feel so sad.
Makes me feel so sad.
It makes me so sad.
It makes me so sad.
And then I would have her take a deep breath. And what typically happens, I don't know if you had any experience of this, as an adult, what we do is we check in with where it's feeling tense or tight or pressure or whatever it feels like for you. We would check in and we would give it an intensity number from 0, no intensity at all, to 10, really high intensity. And we would have that information first. And then we could go back and check, what does it feel like now? I'm feeling, a lot of pressure in my forehead or whatever, and it's a 8. And then we would tap and then go back and check to see what it had perhaps dropped down to. Maybe it went to a 4. Maybe it went to a 2. But it's releasing that blocked energy out of your body. But with a child, she's 10. She just saw her dog get hit and killed. So we just jumped in. I didn't bother with any of that. And she was able to release a lot of that really quickly. And children, it works so much faster with children because they don't have the original trauma that's built upon, then they attract another trauma and another trauma and another trauma that feels very similar to the original trauma. To in our the goal is to attract the other traumas, repeat it so we can process it and release it and let it go. But we don't know how. Most of us don't know how. That's why we often get in relationships that don't work out, and then we get divorced or split up, and then we go out and our radar goes do 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 do, and we find someone else who looks entirely different. But lo and behold, they're triggering our childhood wounds just like the last one did. Because we're trying to recreate those moments so that we can heal them. But we don't know that. So with children, we have a lot less baggage piled on top of it, so it happens faster, it works faster.
So with yourself, when you had that, that trauma incident with your mother and you did the tapping for yourself, how many times did you tap in order to release it? Did it take a while, or how did that work?
Well, there was a lot of layers to it because that was one of my very core issues. So there was a lot of different layers to it. So it took a lot longer. How do I describe this? That there's release, and then there's another layer to the onion that pops up. And then we release that one, and then sometimes it takes a week or a month or however long for the next layer to pop up. And then you work on that and release that. But if it's like, that had to do with so many layers had been built up over my lifetime of having that experience, not being able, I was a realtor and couldn't ask my broker how to do anything because I was too afraid of, if you don't know, you better figure it out. I'm not going to tell you. So that taught me as a 5-year-old not to ask. So I had to figure it out myself. That was really fun throughout my lifetime. Not, because I couldn't ask for help. I should already know was the message that ran in my head,
So you spent many, many years just, like a lot of people too, just going through life, trying to figure everything out on your own. And you cannot ask anybody for help. Is that right?
My body wouldn't let me, even if I tried. And so another experience happened is I worked with, and oftentimes the stuff that happens in childhood, with EFT, you can use it for yourself to just calm your body. Or if you're, let's say, are going to do some public speaking and you're afraid of public speaking, you can do the tapping to just calm yourself down to be able to get up there and do the speaking. Or if you're afraid of getting on an airplane, you can do the tapping and just calm yourself. And then the other piece to that is going down to the core to clear out the core reason why you're afraid of flying in the first place, or that you're afraid of public speaking in the first place. And that's what I love to do, is to help people to go real deep. I've heard you on your podcast talking about going deep. And all my life, people have said, "Oh, Gwen, you're so deep." I didn't know I was deep. I was just being me. But evidently, I'm deep. And
that's why you're here, Gwen. That's why you're here.
And so to be able to go to those core issues, for instance, if we're afraid of doing public speaking, perhaps sometime in 4th grade, the teacher had you get up and do a book report in front of the room, and the kids laughed at you. Well, you went into fight or flight and panic mode, and you've been holding that in your body. So when you're an adult and in your job and your boss asks you to do a presentation to your coworkers, and you get up in front of the room and instantly turn into a 4th grader and are panicking because, they're going to make fun of you. And we carry this stuff in our bodies, and it can be really big traumas. It can be, really, really big T traumas. Sexual abuse, raised by an alcoholic, drug addicted parent, um, you name it, any kind of big, but it can be a look that your dad gave you, or it can be the neighbor made fun of you for something, or I just recently worked with a woman who was in third grade and changed schools, and she's in her 50s, or I think 50s, and she's been struggling with the message that ran in her subconscious as being stupid, and been trying to fight that. Well, we did the tapping, and she remembered leaving her old school in third grade to start a new school. And the new teacher, the first day, she stood up to do something in front of the room, and the teacher called her stupid.
So when that's the question, next question I was going to have is, people know they have certain fears or something that's going on inside their body when certain things happen, but they don't know why. So when you start doing this, the EFT, then these memories come up. Is that what happens? Or
that's what's really interesting, because remember I said that you can't think straight when your hair's on fire. Well, what we're doing is basically putting out the fire. We're turning down, I always think of it as a dimmer switch. I think it's because I was a former realtor. But I think of it as turning down, as we're tapping, we're calming. Like we're talking about small children at daycare not being able to soothe themselves, or your daughter not being able to soothe herself to go to sleep. Well, that's what we're doing with the tapping, is we're soothing ourselves. We're turning down the amygdala. We're turning it down, and hopefully off is the goal, but sometimes even turning it down can help a great deal. And we're able to actually self-soothe with the tapping. And so now I lost my train of thought. The question that you originally asked me was...
So, the memories start popping up of things that we never even realized before, right? Okay.
Right, and that happens all the time, because the blood goes back to the thinking part of our brain. We're calming down, and then we start to see it almost from an adult's perspective instead of that small child's perspective. Or should I say, we start to feel it more from, an adult's perspective, which something terrifying to a 5-year-old might not be any big deal to us, as adults. And so even today, my clients will poo-poo things that happen to them as children because their parents poo-pooed it when they got scared and went to their parents or their caregivers or their teachers or, anyone, and they got scared about something and they went and they got poo-pooed about it. So they learn to poo-poo it for themselves. That's my technical term, poo-poo. But we learn to do that for ourselves, and then it gets shoved down in there deeper, and then another one happens, another experience happens. We shove that deeper. And so that's kind of how it goes. But if we can go in there and release that and process it, basically. And it's a lot like I was listening to a man named Dr. Gabor Mate, who's an addiction specialist, and he I don't want to go into I could talk all day about all this, but he was being interviewed by someone, and the man that he was being interviewed by was talking about being molested as a young child, and that was a pretty big trauma for him. And he said, that may not have been the trauma in itself. He said, after or while that was happening, who did you have to talk to? He said he was about 8 years old in the middle of this molestation. And he said, so who did you have to talk to? And he said, nobody. And then Dr. Monte said, that was the trauma, that you had no one to talk to about it, no one to process it with. And so what we're able to do with tapping, and that's why I call myself an inner child advocate, is because I'm able to help people to calm themselves from it, and we're able to process it, not necessarily with words, but even though I'm feeling this in my body, and releasing it and letting it go, then the charge dissipates. It just kind of melts away. And so then we test it at the end of the session. We test it and go back to see that a charge might have been an 8, that's now a 2. And that we can talk about it and it doesn't impact them at all anymore physically. It's like they're telling someone else's story.
So have you seen people actually are they able to heal like a physical symptom of their body from doing this?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. The first thing that pops up, my husband knows I talk about this, so I'm not talking out of school. But this, as an example, this is the little short story that I can share, is at one point he was really suffering from hip pain for like about 3 weeks. He was really struggling and he was complaining about it and he was really in pain. And I finally said, sit down, we're going to tap because I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm such an emotional freedom coach. But in this situation, he just doesn't, he'll avoid it. And so I said, okay, we're gonna do this because, it's time. And so we started tapping. And, excuse me, a little of the backstory is that he had a dog, a little dog named Alfie that went with him everywhere in his truck. He went, did work with him, and he went everywhere with him, and he was his buddy for 12 years. And we built a house, and during the building of the house, Alfie disappeared. But we were caught up in building the house, so he wasn't able to actually process it. So as we started tapping, he started crying. And we checked in, what's going on? He missed Alfie. And so we tapped on him missing Alfie and not knowing whatever happened to him. We don't know if he was stolen or if he went away and died. We don't know what happened. And it was left unfinished in his body. And so we tapped on it, released that, the pain in his hip went away. And that's been about 9 years, and it's not ever come back.
Wow. So the traumas that we hold in our body can create these, the pains where we're thinking, oh, I might need a hip replacement, or, that's where we all go to, right? But instead, if we just try out some tapping, you never know what might be released.
You never know. That's exactly it, Taz, because, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not trying to say, you should not be checking in with your doctor at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it can work very nicely with it. When I was in training, my trainer explained a great little story where she said, what if we had a piece of glass in our hand, and that our hand was getting all infected and sore and red and nasty, and the piece of glass represented the emotion. So what if we were to take that piece of glass out? What would happen with our hand? It would heal, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's a combination, because there's things that, are really, a broken leg is broken. It's really broken.
Absolutely. Right.
And so, that's the medical.
But then you have the broken leg, but you have the trauma on top of that broken leg of how it happened.
Correct. I worked with a woman once who had a horrible pain in her knee, I believe it was, and she was limping, and she was a young woman, and she'd had this for, like, I remember correctly, like 10 years or 8 years, something like that, and she had created all this emotional baggage around being diagnosed with something to do with her knee, because she was very athletic before and she wasn't able to use her knee properly not nearly as well as she could before, and she was limping, and you could see the pain in her face and whatnot. And we were doing it in a group, and I tapped with her, and we went back to the moment that the doctor diagnosed her with whatever was going on with her knee. And it was probably 15 minutes that we tapped in this group. And all the other people in the group were saying, oh my God, she looks 20 years younger, because all the weight and emotional heaviness that she'd been carrying from that diagnosis lifted.
Wow.
And they could visibly see how much younger she looked. And that was only 15 minutes. So imagine what we can do, with longer amounts of tapping.
Now, how often do you tap now?
As needed.
As needed.
Because you just never know when, some days, I mean, weeks can go by and I'm doing great. And then somebody accidentally brushes up against the button and wham, it comes up. And the good news there's lots of good news, but the good news about this and feeling the experience of that anxiety, stress, fears, phobias, traumas, whatever it is, that feeling that you feel, when you can feel it literally melt out of your body right on the spot, you know that it's possible to do it again. Mm-hmm. So when you get triggered, as I call it, again, I know that it's something to do with my emotions. I know that I have the tools to be able to do that. Sometimes we can do it for ourselves. Sometimes we need a little assistance. I've had to reach out to other people who do tapping to help me in a lot of the younger, the inner child things that I can't quite do for myself. But so many things we can do for ourselves, and we can just calm ourselves with it. And, so.
Well, it's a beautiful thing. You just said that right there, was that you are able to ask for help.
Yeah, we have to. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough one. That's a big one. In fact, I think I heard you talking about that on one of your other podcasts. Mm-hmm. But it's really hard for us to ask for help.
Especially women, because women are so used to taking care of everything in the house, going to work, taking care of the kids, being the caretaker. And it's a cultural thing, right?
It really is. Mm-hmm. And we're both in the EOL group, the Kyle Peace group, and I worked almost primarily with women up to the point, and my experience has been the guys that I've been working with in this group were a little bit more ready to do this work, I guess is the best way I can say it, because I don't want to, I don't want to be mean to anybody, but that's been my experience. But yes, I totally agree with you that as women, we're just so used to being the givers, and and we're repressing that emotion for years and years and years. And EFT and tapping and doing this work is a way to release that and let it go. And it can help so many things.
So how often do you cry now?
I cry when it's appropriate.
Okay, gotcha.
What I like. Like if my grandkids bring me a little bouquet of dandelions or something, it gets a little,
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's incredibly more manageable now, because it's like before I just cried so often all the time, and I didn't have any control, or I didn't know why. I didn't understand any of that, and now it just feels so. I just have so much more. I don't know, dare I say, control of my life. I don't know if that's completely accurate, but it feels like it. feels like
So you were talking about addiction earlier. So what's really fascinating about this is that you can help people. Sorry, there's a little bug. You can help people who have addictions to whatever it may be. It could be drugs, alcohol, food, over exercising, whatever it may be. And then once you get into the process of helping them with the tapping, then you can get down to the deeper level why they're doing that, right?
Well, I have a class right now that one of my clients asked me to help her because she feels like she's smoking too much now. And so what we created a small group on Zoom here that isn't to quit smoking, but it's to tap on the fear of thinking about quitting smoking.
Oh, wow.
So that's what we've been doing. And guess what keeps popping up? Childhood wounds.
Yeah.
And that's
because we know that smoking is not good for you, and then we subconsciously just keep doing it and doing it to feel better. And there's something underneath that's causing that destructive behavior. And gosh, this sounds like an easy way to get to that,
Well, I wouldn't say easy, perhaps simple.
Simple, right? Of course, right? Because the emotions aren't always easy, right? Yeah.
No. And you and I can see that doing the work, the only way out is through,
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I love is that it speeds it up. I was told during training that it's like 1 hour of EFT is like 100 hours of talk therapy.
What?
Because we're working. Well, let me pull out my little show and tell. Do we have time? I don't know what time.
Yeah, we have lots of time. Okay, we'll be done when we'll be done.
Okay. So I have my little show and tell here, and I read about this information right after I started tapping, and it really connected for me, and it helped me really to understand all the years of talk therapy, all the self-help books I read. It helped me so much. So I like to share this with all of my clients right up front, that this is my little iceberg, and very simplistically, this is not, all the details at all, but the piece of ice above the waterline represents our conscious mind. We're consciously aware of. We're making plans, we're doing things, setting goals, that sort of thing is in our conscious mind. And it controls 5% of our perception and our behavior.
5%, that's it?
5%. And it goes at a speed of about 130 miles an hour or 2,000 bits per second. And that doesn't really mean anything right now, but it will in a second. So then we have our subconscious mind, our yes but. You may have heard Kyle talking about our yes but. We set a goal and, it's a great idea and we can't wait to do it. And then our monkey mind starts saying, yes, but I can't do that because, and all of that. Well, that's where all that is stored, is in our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind controls 95% of our perception and behavior. And we're not even aware it's happening. Like our heart beating, our cells dividing, our liver filtering, all that stuff. I like to joke and say, we don't have to put on our to-do list thing. Because if I had to remember for my heart to beat, some days, it wouldn't work so well. But it goes at a speed, our subconscious mind goes at a speed of about 100,000 miles an hour and 400 billion bits per second.
Wow.
So here we are trying to change our lives at, 5% of our perception and behavior.
With talk therapy.
And this is what's really happening. I've heard Dr. Joe Dispenza talk about that. And so, but this is what's really keep driving the bus. It's really driving our bus. And the cool part about tapping is we're doing mind-body connection. Our actual subconscious mind is the cells in our body, actually. And so we're doing mind-body connection. So we're able to turn this around to support ourselves on the issues that we're able to tap on and release and process and whatnot. And we're able to tap it or turn it around so it's supporting us at 100,000 miles an hour instead of fighting against it.
Mm-hmm. So apparently that's really awesome. I love the way that you had that picture there to help us visualize it. I know you've been doing this for a while, right?
10 years, yeah.
10 years. So, and since it helped you out so much, you just dove right into it and wanted to become a coach, right?
Yeah, I actually referred to that as my drive-by tapping period. All my family, all my friends, sit down, we have to tap, you won't believe this stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've gotten a little bit more professional about it now. But I'm still I'm pretty excited about it. Some of the things that happen are just, well, I'm not surprised really about them anymore. But a lot of people are shocked by the things. Well, what's popping into my head is there was a woman that I was tapping with who is a shaman. And she was trying to put herself out there and was having a really hard time putting herself out there. And so we were tapping on something else and this buried memory, and she remembered it, but she buried it pretty good, of a group rape came up from being 20 years old, and she's in her 60s now.
Wow.
And it came up, and it was really, powerful. It's a terrifying experience for her. And so we did the tapping, and we did 7 sessions. And by the end of 7 sessions, and throughout the process, she was able to tell some of the story. But at the end of 7 sessions, she was able to tell all the details in a story format about everything without being charged at all. Wow. There was no emotional charge left. It had melted away. 7 sessions. And the VA hospital, as a matter of fact, just recently, it was probably a little over a year ago now, that the people that started EFT and had been working with the original people that had started EFT actually went to the VA hospital to work with some of the veterans that had come back from war. And they did a documentary that's called Operation Emotional Freedom.
And you know what? Well, I'll put that down in the link so people can take a look at it.
Perfect. And so they have been working with vets, but the VA didn't want to look at the research or whatever happened. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. But it was just a year ago, and they went to the VA, I believe, in the mid-90s. And their research showed that 90% of people who could help 90% of people with post-traumatic stress disorder in 5 sessions, 5 1-hour.
What? Wow. Because, people, I know they have a lot of groups and that sort of thing, because I work at the VA as well. And they have a lot of talk therapy and groups and, all kinds of things that they're doing. But I never heard of that. That's amazing.
And that's the part that hurts my heart, that you've never heard of that. Why? It's been happening. It's been alive and well since the mid-90s. And so just a year ago, the VA nationally accepted EFT as a therapy model. Wow. So they're able to use it now, and I'm so thankful.
So are the coaches, they go in and do that, or do people get trained within the VA? How does that work?
I haven't been in the VA, so I don't know the exact how that works, but I know that I read that they had, accepted it as a treatment plan. And it's just, I see people, and, yes, VA, horrible veterans and suffering with PTSD and their families and their children and their everything. It's just such an incredible thing. But war isn't the only. Oh, I have something else to share with you. That what they learned, and I don't have the research off the top of my head, but what they learned is when people go to war, and this is again very simplistic, but when they go to war and they come back, a portion of those people are really suffering with PTSD, and another portion of them aren't. Why? Well, they realized that after all their research, that those that came back with PTSD, the war wasn't what originally caused their PTSD, it was childhood. And the war triggered it.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah. So their original trauma was from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that really, perked my interest, because I thought, oh my gosh, if you can help people at a childhood level, then what can you help them with? It's been amazing. And I don't know, I was off on another tangent there for a second, and I'm not sure what I was. I remembered that moment, but
A question for you, Gwen. So I see that you're really, really passionate about what you're doing. So my question for you is, what drives you to help people on this level? What really motivates you?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, I think the bottom line really is that I knew how much I suffered from my childhood stuff. And as I used to believe that mine was so minor compared to so many people that I knew. And it affected me that intensely for so many years. Imagine how other people are suffering. And so I remember what I was going to talk about is the ACE study. Have you heard of the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study?
No.
It was done at Kaiser Permanente in San Diego in the mid-90s as well, and I'm trying to keep it a shorter version of the story. With the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and they worked together, and they did it's much more to the story, but they did a research survey with their clients through Kaiser Permanente. There was 17,421, I believe, people that did the survey about who had experienced adverse childhood experiences. And they had a list of 10 things, and they had on the list emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect. Their parents were divorced, or they lost a parent to death or divorce or something like that. They had parents who were drug addicted or alcoholic. They had parents that had mental health issues, including depression. They had a family member who was in prison. And there's another one that's escaping my memory. But they had the 10 questions, and they asked them the 10 questions, and they gave 1 point for each one ACE score for each question. And so the highest score is a 10. And they tested all these people, and the bottom line is they were able to directly correlate what happened to us in childhood to what our adult health is today.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And so there was a direct correlation. The more ACEs that you had, and typically those don't fall in isolation. If you have an alcoholic parent, domestic violence, I believe, was the 10th one. Mm-hmm. If you grew up in a house with domestic violence. And so chances are, if you have a drug addicted or alcoholic parent, there's there could be, bigger chance to have, hello, come back, domestic violence, and or they come, and so they have statistics, and I don't have them on the top of my head, but statistics that if you have 4 or more, there's like a greater chance of cancer, suicide, an enormous amount, and I'm sorry I don't have them memorized yet, but it's just incredible. And so,
and we know this is a huge problem right now. I mean, if you keep seeing the suicides happening everywhere, from every level. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how rich people are. The people are committing suicide. Robin Williams, Anthony Bourdain, I mean, all these people, and then that and beyond. So, and then people, committing such horrible, horrific things like going to school and shooting people, or going to, it's just
absolutely correct. Yeah. And so I find it so critical to do this work because it's repressed, and it's not 100%, but there's so many that are struggling with repressed memories, and that they don't have a way to process them. That tapping is such a simple tool. It's just such a simple tool to just do for yourself. If you don't even get to the deep stuff, at least it's able to calm you from, and drugs and alcohol and all the things we were talking about addiction. It's the same basic idea. Dr. Mate, the man that the doctor I was referring to earlier, is an addiction specialist, and he said that he worked it was in Vancouver, and I can't remember the exact area that he described, but he worked there as a physician for 14 years and in addictions clinic. And he said he had never met one woman who had been there who hadn't been sexually abused as a child. And it's just how many, ACE scores you have. And they've evolved it now, so there's more questions, and there's a lot of people working on it, not as many that needs to be. Mm-hmm. I just recently went to Seattle to listen to a woman, Nadine, trying to remember her name. I have the book over there. But I went to hear, and she's a pediatrician who is working with the ACE study and helping kids that are experiencing this to help them now with their physical issues and whatnot. But it's a matter of tapping is just a way to release that repressed emotion that we don't know what to do with.
Mm-hmm. Because those traumas are just, because everything that's going on outside of us, inside of us, everywhere, is just energy. And the energy will get stuck in our bodies, right?
Right.
And the energy is there, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger the more things start, bugging us or happening to us. And gosh, you got to have an outlet. Yeah, you got to have an outlet somehow.
I love that you bring that up because, the founder of EFT, Gary Craig, his discovery statement of all this, he says that the cause of all negative emotion is a disruption in our body's energy system. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happens. It's like a log jam in our energy. And when the log jam happens, that's the core of disease or dis-ease. And so if we're able to pull some of those logs out and let the water run free or the energy run free, it's very helpful.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about how people can get a hold of you. Do you have a website? Do you have a Facebook page?
I do have a website. It is yourstrongestlife.com. And I also have a Facebook page that's called Are You Ready to Get Out of Your Own Emotional Way? Okay. And it's a closed Facebook page, so people can speak privately
Mm-hmm.
in the group, but you just need to request to be part of it, and I'll look you up and let you in. And we've had that for about 7 months now. And
I'll be sure to put the links below too, so people can get a hold of you that way.
that'd be
Because I know you're going to connect with so many people here, because everybody has stuff within them that they want to release, that they're tired of living with day by day by day. So, I mean, this is a simple way to release that.
It really is. And then if you aren't able to do it for yourself, I'm happy to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I offer an introductory session, an hour for $97, and with a happiness guarantee, because I want to make sure that it's a good fit for everybody, and I want to make sure there's no risk, because there's all kinds of stuff. I do a lot of work also with money, and people get really caught up with money stuff from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I offer a happiness guarantee that if it's a good fit, great. We can, I have more to choose from. And if it's not, you get your money back, minus the PayPal fee. And so I really like to offer that so people can, because you kind of have to feel this. Mm-hmm. It's not something we could talk all day, but people don't understand unless they feel the release.
And I'm sure you've never had to give any money back.
I have not had to give any money.
I just wanted to put that out there. I knew it.
I love this so much, Taz. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share my baby with you and your audience. I love this so much.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to have you on here, because I know you have tons of passion for this, and where that lies and is helping people to become freer inside, to become happier, and to let go of that weight that's inside of them, that it's not needed anymore, guys. Or guys and girls, it's just, you can let it go within who knows how many sessions. Exactly.
Yeah.
And before we go here, I have one more special question for you. What is your, how do you see this, as an emotional freedom coach, how do you see this just growing and being bigger and bigger? And what do you see yourself doing in the future as well?
Well, what I love even more than all of this is that I believe that there's a lot of us, and I'll put myself in that same category, that are entrepreneurs that are wanting to make a big difference in the world, but something is holding them back. They're afraid. For myself, I've spent 10 years fighting with technology and feeling like I'm going to make a mistake and get in trouble. And it's taken me a long time to be able to actually, work with a smaller group of people, but to be able to expand it the way I wanted to expand it, I was constantly being that 5-year-old, keeping myself, sabotaging myself. And I think there's so many other entrepreneurs out there who are doing the very same thing, that if they could get out of their own emotional way, look at the difference that we could make in the world. And the world needs us so badly. And so that's how I think that's my little piece to play in the world. I used to work in politics. I was the director of a nonprofit. I worked for Congress. I wanted to make a difference. And it was such a huge... Anyway, I decided that I would go at it from this direction. And I feel so strongly that if we could just release some of that fear, some of that stress and anxiety, that the world could be, they can make such a big difference in the world. And so that's what I'm really excited about.
Awesome. Gwen, thank you so much. I'm honored to been able to have you here to discuss this and to put this out into the world, and for people to realize that there are ways, simple ways, that they can help themselves become more of who they really are. And I just love your energy. I love that you are like a child. You have so much joy inside of you and so much passion. And it's just been a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Taz. I so appreciate this.
All right. Again, guys, if you want to get a hold of Gwen, I'm going to put the links below. And can you just repeat one more time your website and your Facebook group?
Sure. It's yourstrongestlife.com. And the Facebook group is Are You with an R and a U ready to get out of your own emotional way?
Awesome. Thanks again, Gwen.
Thank you, Taz. Have a
All
great
right.
day.